All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll talk a little bit here before we get to working the cows. The cows are the easy part. Enjoyed listening to Burke's comments on training people. This is the only industry I know of that we expect everybody to know everything they need to know the day they walk on a ranch. It's amazing. And then we fuss and complain because we can't find anybody that knows everything we think they need to know when they show up. And so I think part of what we've got to learn to do is to train people. And the thing that I really have enjoyed about trying to get better at this stockmanship, to teach this, you've got to get better at it. And a lot of us just expect it to come by osmosis. And Burke had some really good comments as well about making things available to you help to learn and getting them in a situation where they can actually pick up some things and learn some things and make themselves better. Stockmanship's no different than any of the other things we get trained on. A lot of people know a lot about handling cattle, and I'm kind of like some of the other speakers. If I can get you to pick up one thing today that'll go home and make you a little better or a little more comfortable in what you're doing, then I think I've been successful in what we set out to do. I've paid attention to a lot of people that work in stockmanship, and probably the best ones I ever paid attention to was my dad and a couple of older fellas that I grew up around. And is Kent still here anywhere? Kent Mills from High Pro was actually working on the ranch I grew up on, so I've known him forever. And he's been somebody that understands these guys I talk about out in between Snyder and Post. And I thought everybody worked cattle the way we did until I moved away from home and realized that is not the way everybody worked cattle. Everybody was really quiet where I grew up, did everything really by the right amount of pressure, not a lot of yelling and screaming. In fact, that was frowned on quite a bit. When I left home, it was a lot of hooping and hollering in the next place I went to, and thought, well, we can do better than that. So I started trying to figure out how we could communicate a little better what we were trying to do and try to understand why what I grew up around worked better. You know, I got a chance to, of course, I paid a lot of attention to Temple over the years, and also Bud Williams, went to a few schools. And I will tell you, if Burke's still in the crowd, that Bud never said I was his best pupil. I guarantee you that. But since then, I've tried to get better and better and keep working on it. And also, as Burke said, you never get perfect. You can still get better. So hopefully, even if you're a really good stockman, you'll find something out of this that can help you a little bit. The other part of this, I think, is the safety aspect. We kind of underestimate the value of stockmanship in safety. And if any of you own a ranch, and insurance issues and workers' comp gets to be a concern. And while I was sitting in the meeting yesterday, I get an email from Texas A&M that one of my employees has filed a workers' comp claim. I thought, doing what? Hell, we're educators. Then I got thinking there's some people come out of the stands try to whoop us every once in a while, so I thought maybe that was it. But it wasn't. He was following a cow he was doing exactly what I trained him to do on a lead up to a chute that had an old Brahman cow that balked going into the chute. So he went to the front, walked by her, and as he walked by her, he turned back and looked, she kicked, and the rock hit him and knocked a tooth out. So sometimes things just don't work like you plan them. But he shouldn't have looked back, he should have kept walking. Because hard-headed as he is, it would not have hurt the back of his head. It will chip a tooth. So anyway, that was interesting. I read that, I thought, well, that's interesting. Never seen that happen. The way I try to get this across, and the paper that Andy wanted me to mention once again, that I've got a paper that's in your proceedings on the little flash drive, I guess it is, Andy, that's called Cattle Handling Pointers. And one of the first clinics that I ever did, Rick Machen, who worked for us, came up afterward and he said, these are the points I think you were trying to get across in that discussion. And so he had 10 points he wrote down that he thought we were trying to get across. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good way to look at this. So Rick Machen and I developed that over the years, and Kirk Pate weighed in on some, and I've modified it every time I get a chance, and every time I learn something new, I try to change that. But it allows us to think very simply about the way cows want us to communicate with them, and then think about what we do and when we do it and what response we'll get out of it. And very simply, there's 3 ways we can, I've always said 3. People in the dairy industry say there's 4. And I'll agree with them, but I don't use their 4th one. The first one is sight. Cows want to be able to see us. All right, so we've got to position ourselves where they can see us and they know what we're asking them to do. And that's not quite as easy as you'd think about sometimes, because a lot of stuff we do, we wind up behind the cattle, okay? And so we'll talk about how to work more from the side and take advantage of that. The other one is through noise or sound. And so if we use sound, we got to be very careful in how we use it. And Dimple, anytime you want to weigh in on some of this, be glad to do so.
I just wanted to make one comment. This person right here beside me said that that really helped them out on getting people to stop yelling and screaming. Because the thing I've said is, there's all kinds of stuff that we can learn about stockmanship, but the first thing you have to do is calm down so that you can learn it.
Yeah. And it's funny, people will see me do these clinics and they say, boy, you're really patient. And Brian, they don't know me very well if they think I'm very patient, do they? I'm not very patient, but I've had to learn to control my expression of what I'm really thinking. That whole deal Burke was talking about on leadership as well. Sometimes you just want to call somebody a dumb butt. And that's not the best way to get a good response out of them sometimes. So you've got to be able to change the way you do some of that and control your emotions so it doesn't spill over into the cattle. Because it's a challenge, it always is a challenge. But noise is something we can use to our benefit. To me, I use it to attract their attention so they can see what I'm asking them to do. I don't normally use it to add pressure. I do it to draw their attention to me. And I've heard Temple say this before, noise, if it has intent, it's different. If you're focusing that anger and noise on a cow, they know it. Because they can sit here and listen to me on the PA all day long and they don't care. Because it's not directed at them. Anybody in here use dogs? Ever been to a dog demonstration? Can they communicate with their dog on the PA? Dog won't listen to them on the PA. They have to turn the PA off and holler at their dog. Because that's different intent coming out of a speaker than it is coming out of somebody's mouth. If dogs and cattle are that sensitive to what we're doing, we got to pay more attention to what we're doing. Okay, it's just that simple. The other thing, touch is another thing we can use. Maybe up here in the lead up to a shoot, you can put a hand, put pressure on one of them, get them to move away from you. The other one that a lot of the dairy folks use is smell. And I don't worry about that a lot. I think they can smell some things, probably more so than we do. But if we're controlling everything, unless you're just really foul, personal hygiene, I don't think it's going to matter all that much to them. And some of them may actually look for it. I know some people come up with cologne on, the cows may respond different. And so there is a difference there on smell. And then there's 5 things I try to get everybody to think about, and it all goes back to that first one, really. You got to position yourself where the cattle can see you. That's first and foremost in my opinion. Then there's a tendency for cattle to want to go around you. And if you put pressure on them and just keep pressure on them, they're going to make a circle around you. And we'll go demonstrate all this in just a second. The next one is they are herd animal, so they will follow one another for the most part. They're not like small ruminants or even Brahman influenced cattle. When one goes, they all go. Boss Taurus cattle, some of them may splinter off every once in a while. And if you're buying cattle and putting cattle together, they don't function as a herd when you first do that. So there's some things we can do to create that herd effect. And we see a lot of people that aren't building a lot of fences, like Burke was talking about in grazing systems, are actually teaching those cows to stay in a herd, and they're herding them like we used to do. And so they're saving on the infrastructure costs by actually herding their cows into an area, and then they'll stay there and graze that area, and then they can move them to another area the next day. So there's a lot of things we can do from stockmanship that can actually help make things a whole lot more economical. So we got want to be able to see us, go around us, follow one another. They want to remove pressure, which is probably the main thing we're going to talk about today, is pressure and release. And effective stockmanship, as I like to call what we're trying to do, is not anything about low pressure and being gentle and singing kumbaya to cows. It's about putting a lot of pressure on them at the right time to get the right response. And so we've got to know our timing has to be right. Another thing I see people that are trying to get better at this, sometimes they're afraid to be wrong. And why do people in our industry get afraid to be wrong? Because normally when you're wrong, somebody chews your butt out. All right? They don't tell you what you should have done right, they chew your butt out for being wrong. And so we've created a whole culture where people are afraid to try things for fear of being shamed, basically. So I really encourage people, when you're out by yourself working, try something. If it doesn't work, so what? Fix it. Try it a different angle. See what works best the next time. That's the way you get better at it. Every time you feed cows, every time you do anything with a cow, you can practice on it. And we don't take that opportunity. One thing I think that's really changed the way we do cattle work in Texas or livestock handling, my dad and the guys that I grew up around grew up in the screwworm era. And I was visiting with a gentleman yesterday that said he made doctored the last case of screwworms up in this part of the world or somewhere down here around Wichita Falls or somewhere, wasn't it? Screwworms were around in the 70s, even when I was a kid. And we got to doctor the last set of fly drops and stuff like that. But we were in the cattle constantly. And we don't do that as much as we used to. We go get them when we have to. And my dad never allowed the word bored to cross his boys' lips. All right? If he even thought you might be thinking about getting bored, you were either cleaning up saddles, cleaning up the shop, or prowling pastures. And mostly prowling pastures. And so he kept up the same technique they used during the screwworm area to go out and ride those big pastures and get those cattle grouped up, control them, let them go to the next group. And so we'd run around. That's how we took cow counts. Nobody ever went and caught them at water. We actually rode and gathered pastures and held them up and did cow counts. And if you didn't come back with all the cows, he'd send you back to look for them. And so that was something that was very different in the way I grew up than what I've seen some people situation. So the last thing that, we're talking about taking that pressure off. That's the main thing we're going to focus on. And last and not insignificant is they can really only think of one main thought at a time. They're a lot like a guy, okay? We're going to use this analogy because a lot of you are already chuckling. Some of you be poking one another on this one. But here's the other thing about it. You give a guy a task and he'll do it if it's not too what? Unpleasant. If it's something we really don't want to do, I don't care how much we know it needs to be done, we'll put it off. So what does the spouse normally do? How do we get a task done that's unpleasant? Keep a little pressure on them, right? So you may just be a little friendly reminder here and there to get this done. So as we go to work in cattle, we're going to ask them to do some unpleasant things. And so our timing of pressure and the amount of pressure and how long we leave it is important. Okay, so we've got to really think about that as we're working cattle. They want to take pressure off and they can only think about one thing at a time, but we've got to make them stay focused on that one thing till they commit to do it. All right, I'm going to ease out here and start picking up these cattle. It's always interesting to me to watch the cattle as we're getting ready to do one of these. Some of y'all probably been watching the cows more than listening to me, which is fine too. But they always tell you a story and they always know what the fool over here on Grace is about to do. All right, so when I turn around, they know something's about to happen. They don't know what yet, but they'll see what the fool on Grace does. So as soon as I turn around and start interacting with them, they're going to know whether I know what I'm doing or know that I don't know what I'm doing. So we're going to work off flight zone. We're going to use point of balance. All the things that Dr. Grandin was talking about earlier, I imagine I was down here moving pins and didn't get to listen to her this morning. But all of those are things we talk about and use to get cattle to do what we want to do. And so as soon as I start going toward these cattle, they're going to start responding. And when they do, I've got to let them know I realize that's the point, that I've got to release some pressure. So as I go, you can start watching heads come my way as I start working toward these cattle. Right now, every heifer has looked at me. So they already know that I'm coming. And they're starting to move just a little bit, so I'm going to stop and let them know that's the result. That's what I wanted them to do. Now, if I want them to go somewhere, I'm going to have to put a little more pressure, but they're all facing the right direction. This is something else. Cattle won't go until they all face the same direction. So now I'm going to put just enough pressure to get all of them moving. We'll just try to go to the other end right now. These heifers are not, they're taking quite a bit of pressure. They're certainly not wild. But I'll just come in as soon as I get this break and they start moving, I'm gonna stop. That's what I want them to do. I want them to move off. If I want them to move more, I'll go put pressure on them from the side, send these cattle forward, and now I've got movement. If I want them to stay straight, I really need to come out here. I don't want to stay in behind them, but if I stay out here, I can send them straight to the other end. Because remember that wanting to go around you? If I stay in too close, and I'll just see if they'll actually pull back around. That front heifer's not looking at me, but I'm gonna see as I step in here, if some of these heifers will start looking at me, they may pull off the fence. They're starting to look, but they're just as soon go to that gate down there. But I'm gonna see if I can stay in behind them and see how I can pull them out of that corner. By just pulling in behind them, I've actually changed their direction of motion. If I'm staying out there, I can send them straight. If I want them to go to that corner, then I've got to reposition myself back up here and straighten the front out. I'm gonna work on the front, and I'm gonna assume the back's gonna come to it. I'm gonna push on this 869 heifer, and she's gonna send a whole bunch around the other side. Then I can send them to that corner. I don't worry about all of them. I find me one that I can make a leader out of, and I'll send them forward. I'm just gonna keep pushing side to side. See, they keep turning, so I've got to push this side and straighten the front out. Then I'm gonna come to this side and pick them up over here. Then I can try to straighten them out before this little heifer did not go onto the corner, which is fine. Now I've got her stopped. Now that one may squirt if I push on this one. So I got to be careful about that. Now she's actually letting me push a little bit. I'd like to go ahead and send them up in that corner. So we'll just play with this a little bit. Because they've stopped short of where I want them to go. And that's not what, I can't have that. I got to get them where they need to go. So I'll start that side. I'll send some more cattle around the side. Now we got them going both ways, so I got to be a little careful. Now notice my flight zone's already down quite a bit on these heifers. In fact, if I'm not careful, I'll get these cattle too dull. They can use plenty of life. Now I want her to stay with that bunch. Now I'm gonna try to send these around without them coming too far. Send them back around that corner. Then I'm gonna send these. I'm learning that heifer that liked to move a while ago. She likes to come all the way around the backside and squirt out. So here we're just gonna keep pushing around, and when I do, I've got to realize they're gonna come out this side. And to me, this is fun. It may be boring to watch, but it's fun to figure out how to make these heifers do what I need them to do. Now, see, they're all going different directions right now. So now we're starting to get a little movement toward the corner. And I didn't really talk about horsemanship and some things that can do for us. But I want to be able to have a horse that can stay straight, stay quick, responsive, and not really run off. I don't want them overreacting either. So I've got to have one that I can send where I need them to go. I'm just going to keep putting a little pressure. This heifer here will leave if I'm not careful. Because if I start down her side, she's going to step this way. Now I've got these coming back where I need them. And now why am I worrying about getting cattle in this corner? I want them to know that they can go anywhere I ask them to go. And this corner is a whole lot easier to get them to go to than that gate's going to be going into the corrals in a minute. So I need to be able to get them positioned where I need them to go. Now I need Grace to stay straight. She's wanting to go sideways. I don't need her to do that. I need to tuck this little heifer in or she'll leave. Now I'm going to send some of these around this side if I can. If they go to the back, that's fine too. Now everything I'm doing, I'm pushing on an eye. Now I talked about getting cattle to respond to pressure on an eye. And that's what I want to do. I'm not worried about their butt or anything else. We talked, they respond to eyes and ears. And so all I'm trying to do is push on an eye and turn an eye, get them to go where I need them to go. Now I've got them kind of set up a little bit more. Grace, don't turn. Now I may lose this one. I gotta be careful. But we're getting them closer to where I want them to go. Now I could scream and holler and blow this whole thing up right now. But I can also send that heifer back. If she takes off, I can go up her side and stop her. I don't have to go in front of her. Just up her side and stop her. And now we're just easing them a little closer to where I need them to be. And when I've got to be careful not to put too much pressure on them. They're doing pretty much what I want them to do. I'd like for them to go that gate and just stick their nose on it, but they may not right now. And here's another thing, if you got a good horse, you can just move his body sideways and stop flow and movement. All right. Rather than keep fussing with them, we get them close to this gate, we're going to do some other things. And so this is why these heifers, I want them to be able to start, stop, and turn. That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But if I can get them to where they'll start easy, I'm going to send this heifer around, she'll start my flow, and she'll start pulling these others out. But if I want to stop them, all I've got to do is ride straight up their side, and I can stop them. That one on the far side hadn't seen me yet. When she does, I should be able to stop. And I'd like for them to stay straight. That way when they do stop, I may have to ride up a little more, I may have to get a little closer. Those coming in behind kept them moving. But I want them to be able to stop straight. And if I have to, I'll go all the way to the fence with them to start with to stop them and get them where they'll actually respond to me. I'll keep pinching on them here. But this tells me right now that they're actually not listening to me. They're just going where they want to go. So I got to put enough pressure to make them stop. Right. But if I want them to go, all I got to do is back up. If I can keep Grace straight, and I'll start my movement again. I don't have to go behind them. Now sometimes the faster, now so we're having fun now. I've been wanting to do that for a while. This is interesting. These run off, so we're just going to let the others come to them if they will. Cattle don't like to be by themselves. Well, that was unnecessary. But if I want to speed them up to the corner, I may actually come down their side and speed them up. Got to be careful. If I turn and go the same direction, the same speed like I was a while ago, I may actually slow them down. We'll just let motion take them into that corner. And Temple, if there's anything you want to say, don't hesitate to. I can't see you, so just start talking. I'm fine with that.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I notice that some of these animals have something else on their mind too.
They got Burke would like them. They got the right thing on their mind, right? Got that fertility deal on their head.
That's right. I noticed that. And they're low enough stress so they can have some other things on their mind. Because if they were really super stressed, they wouldn't probably be doing that. Because they'd be too worried about the handling.
And like I said, I can get these heifers pretty dull if I'm not careful. And so I've got to be careful not to stop them too much or get them to going too slow. And that's why I don't mind them. If they want to run and play a little bit, in this setting at least, it's going to work. But if I need them to go faster, then this is where you can actually come back and forth across and do that same thing a border collie dog would do. Put that pressure on them to go to the other end, and I can get them to thinking about something else. It may not be as fun, but I can get them to thinking about something else. So I can loosen these heifers up. They like this end of the arena quite a bit more. But I want them to go the other end. So if they're wanting to hang here, I'm gonna get them to go. Me and 869 is gonna have a fun day today. She's got her own little drum corps, and that's fine. Now there I had to put more pressure on them to get them to go than I did the first time. But by doing that, they've also gone to the corner I couldn't get them to a while ago. So being easy down here, I didn't create the same movement in them as I did the second time when I put more pressure on them. So that tells me that I've got to be real careful about how I put pressure on these heifers to see what I can get them to do. Now, one thing we don't talk a lot about in a lot of these clinics is working pairs. And nobody wants to bring a good cow-calf pair into one of these, and I understand that. And there's some reasons not to. But this is the corner we couldn't go to. Now it's a pretty good spot because I was a fool on the other end. All right, so now I want to get them to move off this corner. We'll try to go to the other Hemphill County EMS over there just to see if we can. And it's something else we'll talk about. We'll get back to the cow-calf pairs in just a second. But these cattle can really learn to do some things if we'll let them. Weight 69 leading my troops. I got to stay out here to keep her straight. Because she will go elsewhere. But I'm not going to worry about going to get them, because if I can keep her straight, the rest of them are going to go to her. Okay? Now once she stops, then I can put pressure to keep these going up behind her, and I can get them comfortable in that spot. Now, while we've got them doing this, I'm going to leave them comfortable right there. Take pressure off. If you deal with yearling cattle and putting groups together, a lot of times you actually need to do a lot of what we're doing here and get them to travel together and stay together as a group. And nearly every set of cattle you run into will wind up with a corner they like to go to. And I think these are going back to that corner. That's their favorite corner. So I had to put a lot of pressure on them down there to make them decide these other corners are all right. So if I've got incoming cattle that I'm preconditioning, I'm going to make every effort to let them know they can go to any spot in this pen and be comfortable. I don't just let them go dig a hog wall in that end down there and stay. And I see so many receiving pens where that's the case. They just stay in one corner of the pen. They may go eat, but they routinely go to a different corner. To the same corner. All right, now back to that's where they're going again. So I'm just going to stop them, let them stay down here. On cow-calf pairs, one thing we see a lot of times, and probably not as prevalent in this area, but a lot of times we'll call cows to us, use a cake wagon. If you do that, you start separating those cows and calves, and you teach them to leave that calf. So when we're moving pairs, I try not to have anything draw from the front. May actually have somebody hold the front up so the cows can't leave. But if they're out in the pasture and we're wanting to move, I'll go around on the opposite side of where I want the cows to go, and we'll just actually start. You might even lope your horse around, do circles, warm them up. Those cows will go get those calves and get them up, and then they'll start leaving with them. Once they pair up and leave, then you've got a chance to keep them with them the rest of the day. Burke made a comment earlier, kind of in passing, I hope some of you caught, about in rotation or pinning his cows. That boy that was really good in Bud's opinion. They went through his pairs. Everything left and went as a pair. That's a tough thing to get done, but it's really important. And I see so many places they're pushing calves in the back and the cows are strung out and they're not taking their babies with them. And that can be a problem, okay? So that's something we want to try to work on the pairs and make them, you can do that. That's one good thing also about the sandhill system he was talking about, because you actually have to kind of go in and sort those pairs off that first week and teach that cow to take that calf with them, so then you can take the springers on to the next pasture. So there's a lot of things in that process that helps build that maternal bond and get those cows to where they're actually going in and taking those calves with them when they need to. I'm going to get these heifers around here a little closer, and we'll see if we can put them in this. Guess an ideal place for a gate going in the corral, isn't it? Yeah. I'd have been thinking it may be easier to put them through that 4-foot gate before this is over with. But one or the other will get them in there. But I'd like to get them over here and let them watch me open that gate. Now I know that sounds a little odd, but if they can see me open the gate, they at least know what my intent is. So I'll try to get them over here a little closer and stop them straight. That's where it's also talking about stopping these cattle straight where they don't turn back. And we'll see if this works. I don't know if it will or not. We're going to see. But if I think it won't work, it's a pretty good chance it won't, right? So my objective right now is to go put them in that hole. Now I've got to keep them all thinking, and that's something I hadn't really talked about. I want these cattle responding to me. I don't want them reacting to me. That sounds a little different perhaps, but I want them to actually move forward and respond to my pressure. Now I'm going to just see if she'll lead them out there a little closer to those pens. If they won't, I'm going to step in behind them.
About the responding versus reacting. When they react, it's like a sudden spook. They're just afraid. When they respond, they're making a deliberate motion to move away. There is a difference, and I think that's really a great comment.
All right, now I'm getting them about as close as I want them to get them. If I can coast them to a stop right there, I'm just going to go in a straight line to my gate, kind of keep them drawn this way. They're still watching. They may turn back before it's over with, but some of them are going to see me do this. And if I'm bringing cattle, I've got a doctor in or whatever, this would be the process I'd try to use. All right, so now, that's where I wish they wouldn't have turned back. Some of them turned back and got that heifer in heat on the back. So I'll have to start them again, but they saw me open the gate. Now I've got to get them responding to me. They're responding to each other right now. Once they get started, I've got to be back in my position to control the flow at the front, if I can. I'm late. But they're looking at it, but they're also looking at Andy Holloway, and I don't know if they'll ever go that direction.
You're right.
But this whole process, I'm just going to try to work them over there a little closer and see if their curiosity won't help me out. I don't want to turn this heifer back, but I want her to go on up there and look at that. Now notice I'm stopping this heifer, and I don't really want to do that. But if I can ease over here, don't turn back. Oh, that's my bad. Me and Grace made way too big a move there. I didn't want to do that. But she was gone before I could get a hold of her. And so you got to be careful. Sometimes your horse can be too cowy to do some of this. I wanted to move a little bit, and Gracie ready to move a lot. So we got to start it over. No big deal. May actually help. Got them grouped up a little bit better. So now I can let my favorite cow take the rest of them in if she will. These got to feed to them. And so I've got to take these to push the others up to the front so they can get in the gate. I don't want these coming around. I'm going to try to push her in. That'll give me an opening to send these to. Now I've got to keep enough, remember that bad thing that some of them don't want to do? I got to keep enough pressure on them to make sure they go ahead and go. But we can pin them just about anywhere we want to if we got our stuck ducks in a row. And me and Gracie made a mistake there a while ago and made a big jump. But guess what? We didn't throw a hissy fit about it. Now she can't make herself turn away from him. Back her up here and get the gate. I want her looking at the gate. I don't want her going the other way. But if I can pen cattle in a novel setting, as quiet and easy as that, I think I've done all right.
And I certainly would agree with that.
The only thing that overreacted was me and Gracie, all right? So she's good, and we're gonna get off and do a little bit on foot now.